willing to compromise.
And our next guest says there's been a failure in leadership to solve this crisis. Joining us now is Texas Congressman Louie Gohmert. Nice to see you, Congressman.
It's great to see you.
And this failure of leadership, not necessarily just against the president. You blasted GOP leaders this week for a failure to lead, basically saying we need to stand on our, but they've got a delicate position to deal with, right?
Sure. Well, and actually, all week up until yesterday, there had been a failure of leadership. I mean, you had the president out there yesterday finally pushing it so far, saying, you know, look, we're going to forget the Constitution. I'm going to basically pronounce law as I speak it. Congress hasn't done what I wanted, so we're just going to ignore Congress's constitutional right to appropriate, Congress's constitutional right to set debt ceilings, and we're going to ignore that. That's what Gohmert basically announced for the president yesterday. And fortunately, Speaker Boehner yesterday stood up and said, look, we can't allow that to happen. And the fact is we can't. If we fail the Constitution, it's going to be a lot worse than going over this ledge. We went off the fiscal cliff when the president got reelected, so now we're just bouncing down further and further ledge to ledge. But the thing is, for him to say we're going to increase spending, we're going to let me give away more money. Are you kidding? You got more cylinders you hadn't already thrown money away on? Enough is enough, and we need to stand firm. And the leverage we have is the debt ceiling, and I'm hoping our leadership is going to bring that to bear.
Many feel the leverage the president has. He says, look, I want to cut taxes or to keep taxes where they are for those making $250,000 and less. I want middle-class taxes to stay low, but the Republicans, they won't let that happen. He comes forward with $1.6 trillion, though, in new taxes in this new deal. What do you think of that deal, and where are you willing to compromise in terms of revenues?
Well, the president we had 2 years ago basically said, and I'm not sure who this one is, but the one a couple of years ago said it would be insane to raise taxes during a recession. We're still in the recession. We're still 8% basically on unemployment. So for us to raise taxes...
Where can you compromise? Where will you compromise in the House?
I want fair share more than the president. He has not proposed anything that will have Warren Buffett pay what his secretary does. We do. It's called flat tax. Have 15% capital gains where Buffett's paying right now. Have his secretary at 15%. If you make more, you pay more. A flat tax will do that. And Steve Forbes, Arthur Laffer, a number of people are going to be really pushing that this week. You wait and see. That's a fair share. That's what we ought to do. And the compromise will be on what we cut. Good grief, in the House we cut 11% over the last 2 years of our own budget. We should be demanding, and our leadership hadn't done it yet, 11% cut across the board throughout the government. This president's not even talking about that. He's talking about increasing spending.
Do you like the president's, I'm curious your take on the president's sort of populist argument now. He's out there almost on the campaign trail again, trying to sell this to the American people.
Well, Clayton, that's because that's what he does well. He's a campaigner-in-chief.
But he's
what he does
polls.
well.
Isn't he looking at those polls which shows that the Republicans have been beaten down? And the polls show that if this thing happens, most of the American people would blame the Republicans.
But he has been so abusive as of yesterday, so arrogant in what his demands are. You know, just virtually unlimited power. I think he's gone so far now that he has even pushed our leadership into standing firm. And I tell you, you know, to do what's right for the American people, do what's right under the Constitution, so what if you lose the next election? If we can save the country despite this president driving full speed over the cliff, then it would be worth it to save the country for future generations. I mean, what this guy's doing, this president, right now with monetarily is so immoral. You don't spend future generations' money because you can't stop spending. You got to keep borrowing. That's insane. It's time to make some realistic cuts, and there are plenty to make.
Yes or no? Do we fall off the cliff?
There'll probably be a deal done at the last minute, but I'm telling you, it's okay. There's really not a fiscal cliff. There's really not a fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff, like S&P tried to explain a year and a half ago, is if you don't make cuts. We didn't make cuts. They downgraded us. That will be the fiscal cliff.
Perhaps
we
another
don't make
downgrade.
The cuts.
Congressman, thank you for being here on the first day of December. Have a great Christmas if we don't get to see you.
What if you do see me?
Then I'll say it again, and I'll buy you coffee.
Good. Well, great. I hope you do as well.
Thanks so much.
All
right, coming up, one with nature.